we have this crap here, but it's going to be good in 20 years. so, so I suggest we use that. I was thinking about something. Um, you know, with the newest version of Datafix 2021,
Mm.
apart from 64-bit and apart from Unicode, it's SQL all over, and we have a new sample application which has to run on SQL to make any sense to run it. The embedded database has been one of the very, very strong points of Datafix throughout the years, that there was a database with development tool that didn't cost a fortune. I remember back in around year 2000 when we were going to make a tender for an offer for a customer, and that implied a Oracle database,
Yeah.
and they charge you 1,000 krona, which is equivalent to 140 euros, something like that, for every um, tick on the clock frequency. So the smallest server you could get at that moment would be 400 megahertz, which would then be 400,000 Danish kroner,
Uh,
or roughly 55,000 fucking euro for the database.
mm.
Um, anyhow, when I started with Datafix back in '86, um, I went to see the distributor at that time, which was called Eurosoft, and I was a bit puzzled because I had started on some database lectures on university at the time, and that was all about SQL. So I was asking why Datafix didn't use SQL. The answer I got was that SQL was hopelessly backward and of no practical use and with absolutely no future. That was in '86.
Yeah.
And I'm not quite sure when the first MySQL database emerged. That must have been at the turning of the century, millennium actually. But it seems to me that from SQL being introduced in university circles, until it got mainstream, took about 20 years. And a lot of other stuff uh, has lingered, or whatever term you would use, in universities, uh, only to be mainstream at a later point. Um,
That's right.
and that's us. That raises an interesting question. I think is when to adopt the technology. You'll have to think about: does it add any value to the customer? Is there any business cases you can make here at the moment, and how does it actually evolve this technology? I mean, another very commonly used technology known as the internet uh, is very popular for video conferences such as this at this pandemic time here.
Yeah.
But I remember I got my first proper internet connection, where you could ping other servers and you could use Terminal, Gopher, and stuff like that. That was back in '93,
Yeah.
um, and it cost me a fortune, by the way. It was about 100 euros just to hook up to IBM's internet portal
Mm-hmm.
or connection, and then the telephone expenses on top of that, which wasn't flat rate. So that was really ravishingly expensive, but also very funny. And you couldn't use you couldn't use the internet for any practical things at the time. I mean, I couldn't see any practical use for it anyway. the HTTP was just begun, and you know there was a very limited number of pages that you could surf on. But my brother, he was heading a government agency at the time, and he was talking about email, and I said, oh yeah, yeah, well, wonderful. Why don't you just pick up the phone instead of using the email? Now, that particular, they had Danes working in various countries, offices in various countries over the world. So that was a practical thing for him, using email.
Yeah.
But it came to the rest of us much later. I can't remember. I'm not precisely remember. I think it must have been about 94, 95. I actually received an email for the first time. It was a Christmas greeting from Jack Daniels Company. That's the first email I ever got. And so now we're using Teams and Zoom and everything, and it's mainstream, and it's making us, it's possible to make it, somehow make it through this pandemic period here also. And which is more to the point, everything is internet now in terms of applications. When everybody was talking about internet some 20, 25 years ago, 20 years ago, I was having difficulties in envisioning how that would be. Um, and now that we are here with the internet, you know, I realize that everything is just the same as it always were, just different.
Yeah.
Now,
Well,
for instance, when we do applications, they're all server-based, they're all Windows or web-based. I'm sorry, but the concept of an application is still the same. It's just another media, and it makes it easier to use for people not actually in a specific building. But other than that,
yeah,
it's
the
sort of the
core
same.
problems are the same.
Yeah.
The things we need to do and things we need to achieve are basically the same. We just add an extra layer of
Yeah.
complexity and automation on top of it.
I wanted to take a chance, you know, to be on the forefront of the development. So I had this customer um, who were going to modernize their DOS network.
Mm-hmm.
So I suggested they changed to OS2,
Yeah.
which was superior to Windows at the time. Then, on the long term, I must admit that was the wrong choice. But it was nice when it lasted. You know, as long as it lasted, it was really a nice operating system to work with.
Yeah, but at the time, it might have been the right decision. And I suppose they worked with OS2 for a while as well.
Um, but when I think back, you know, it was impossible to me to say, okay, we have this crap here, and but it's going to be good in 20 years. so, so I suggest we use that.
Yeah, but we were through somewhat the same situation with the IoT. You
Mm-hmm.
started dabbling with IoT because it's kind of grew, and we noticed it, and you realized that you had the skills to actually build things in IoT. So we started a process of talking to people, and all of a sudden we had a ton of different projects going in, and it was really interesting. And then all of a sudden everything just disappeared.
Yes.
Did we
Um,
kind of hit the top of the hype curve, or what happened? Or and is the IoT slowly coming back soon, or what's going on?
the top of that hype was a couple of years ago, and it seems to me, from what I hear on the jungle drums, you know, from the signals out there, that um, it's slowly re-emerging.
Okay.
Um, and if it does, it's like what happens every time. Gardner made this particular curve. the hype cycle.
from
I
OpenAI.
like this peak of inflated expectations.
Yeah,
Uh, trough. Does it say trough of disillusionment? Oh, yes, it's a trough, yes.
yeah,
And then slope of enlightenment, plateau of productivity. And we might actually be on the slope of enlightenment with IoT at the moment.
yeah.
We need the business case. And that's always the problem. I mean, you
Yeah,
can do
I
anything you want.
remember when we were out there trying to find someone who wanted to buy a solution or anything. The business cases were absent, completely absent. There were some companies who managed to make things that got sold, but the the demand for the IoT devices was very low, very sparse.
Yeah, well, one of the problems was that uh, one of the fields of application was within what would this being energy optimization in households, and that was the law at the time in Denmark anyway, subsidizing initiatives uh, for energy optimization or savings. But they took that away, and at that time, a lot of business cases just evaporated. A shame, actually.
Yeah,
Um, but okay, we're ready for it.
yeah, yeah. We've we've started. We know where
Yeah,
to go.
yeah.
We've made our R&D, so now we
Yeah.
can be ready to run when project shows up.
So what's on the hype curve right now? On the peak on the hype curve right now? Would you say?
Yes, that's a good question. I think machine learning is also coming back in the slope of enlightenment because there are more and more. There's not so much hype and kind of. Uh, it's not a buzzword like it used to be, but it's I see more and more projects using machine learning, and I hear people asking about machine learning more. So the demand is growing. Uh, I'm not sure. I think we see a lot of 3D, augmented reality things. Um, my wife showed me yesterday that Google has done something with animals in the Google search. So if you search for lion, you can get an augmented reality version of an animal, or a lion in this case, that shows up in your living room. You can go around and look at it. That they've got a ton of animals like bear and falcon and penguins and stuff like that. So that's kind of a fun thing. The kids played with it yesterday.
Oh, well, that's great. Great news because um, then we can replace the nature with augmented reality.
Yeah,
That's what's going on anyway, isn't it?
you don't
The
have to go
species
to
are
the zoo
disappearing and
anymore.
so on. No,
You can you can just use your phone and then you have a lion in your living room.
great. But that's where you have the sort of the what is it called? Uh, Entertainment industry as a driver.
Yeah, exactly. And I hear things about Apple coming with some glasses. Um, I'm not sure what happened to Google Glass if they are doing something. I know that Microsoft has their product HoloLens um, that they use for industry. It's not ripe for personal market yet. But there are a lot of products kind of coming quite soon where you basically put on a pair of glasses and then you get augmented reality wherever you go. The machine learning technology is so good, so you can basically in real time recreate your fingers uh, using a camera, and that makes the need for gloves and stuff like that to track your hands not necessary. You don't even have to have these controls, because the way you move your fingers can be recognized by the camera in such a good way, so that you don't need any extra technology, which makes the feeling of actually playing with something even stronger.
But that arises another question,
Mhm.
which is, do you take the red or do you take the blue pill? It seems to me that being in the Matrix is also quite fun and interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, that's up next. If you look at Elon Musk's Neuralink,
Mm-hmm.
that's actually something that's probably in the R&D state right now. They are playing with monkeys, and the monkeys can play some games now using this Neuralink that's connected to their brain. They're going to use this for disabled people to make them able to walk again. So they're going to connect some thin wires into your brain, and then use those wires to connect down to your muscles or some prosthesis to move your limbs.
So it's Elon Musk we should be afraid of, and not Bill Gates.
Yeah, these days, yes. Bill
Okay, well,
Gates
nice to know.
is just trying to make good things in the world.
Well, it's about time. I mean, he has a lot on his conscience, if you ask me. All the wasted work hours from Blue Screen of Death, if you add it all together, and they made it up in terms
Okay,
of money, how
so
much would that be? Well, yes. So we've covered a lot of of space since SQL in back in the 80s until
yeah,
Elon Musk trying to make zombies out of us all.
yeah. So that was, I think, enough for this video. And then we have to continue this interesting conversation about future tech at some other point.
Yes,
Yeah.
maybe some of our vast group of followers have some suggestions on what should be should be another topic of what kind of technologies that we could talk about.
Yeah, that's a good idea, actually.
Yeah.
So if you have any ideas, just write them in the comments and we'll talk about them at some other point.
Yeah.
Good.
Right. Yeah. See ya.
See you next week.
See ya.
Bye.